Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam General. Pleasure to see you again.
Thank you. You as well.
I'm very interested in what you're discussing with the Street Crimes Unit combating heroin. A few years ago when we came in, you and I had this discussion. And I'm wondering, have you deployed this Street Crimes Unit to points west of the mountain, namely Newcastle, where the heroin train from Detroit is coming from?
We have regions, I believe there's, in the western side of the state, there are 3 regions, and then we pull a region from the central part of the state. When the heroin epidemic came to a light in western Pennsylvania, and when I say came to a light, I mean the only way that it really made anyone's radar was because of the unfortunate overdoses and the alarming amount of deaths in 2 weeks. We realized the pattern that was happening. We took our three regions together. We took in Allegheny County DA's office, all of the local police departments, and we saw that it was also heading a bit towards the east as well, and we pulled in some of the other regions from there. We all sat down and information shared, and then we spread out. We had an exact plan of who's going to go where. We had agents working with local police officers, state police officers, and that's where I think we made the greatest impact. Now, the areas, around Johnstown, I got a call from Representative Barbin, wanted to talk to me. So I went down and he said, we have a terrible problem in our region. We need you to get there. The very next day, the head of my BNI was meeting with Representative Barbin, meeting with the district attorney out there, and also meeting with their stakeholders, with their local police chiefs and their departments, to figure out a plan so that we're not all stepping on each other's toes. The information sharing and the intelligence that we gather, because we have switched more from a reactionary to an intelligence-based, proactive approach to investigation. So it's not a scattergun approach where we wait until we get a call from the neighbors that there's a drug house down the street. We use the intelligence that we have across the state, and we figure out where the problem is, and then we deploy the certain units and our teams together to go and hit those units. I believe that because I think probably the greatest measure of that success is the way that the heroin overdoses did in fact stop in western Pennsylvania, and the fact that our drug arrests are up about 30% over the previous year.
That 30%'s welcome news, but the deaths haven't stopped now.
It's unfortunate until we get to the point where we have education enforcement and strong treatment. It's not going to stop. We'll never stop it. Somebody asked me, why don't we just give up on the war on drugs? We're never going to stop it. You're darn right, we're never going to stop it. But every life that we save is somebody's child, and that's at least worth the fight. So the 30% raise, yes, while that's good news, it's not going to stop it. I'm a big proponent of treatment as well. I can throw somebody in jail because they're on drugs, but they're still going to be addicted when they come out of that jail. And it's our responsibility, I believe, as public officials to make sure that they have that treatment so that they don't reoffend, because then they become our problem again when the recidivism rate goes up.
That's interesting. If you keep them in there long enough, they clean up.
Well, they do have programs to clean them up. They do dry out. There's no doubt about that. They do go through a withdrawal, and they do go through the treatment programs. I'm hoping that it's enough, but judging by the rates, the recidivism rates, it probably isn't enough. We probably need to strengthen our treatment programs, and that could also be a combination of maybe working with health care to make sure that if a parent sees that their child is addicted to heroin, I think the biggest question we get from parents is, what do we do now and where do we go? And sometimes it's a matter of finding them a bed and making sure that they have the funding to pay for it.
Thank you. Earlier today, we heard from our friend Auditor General DePasquale, who I served with Eugene. He's a good friend. He made the point of saying his department over there had saved $1.7 million in operational efficiencies by reducing staff by 77 positions. And I see you want to go the other way. Could you speak to that?
We do have cost-saving measures of $1.1 million, and that's in our IT department. We want to go the other way because we're comparing apples and oranges with the Auditor General and the Attorney General.
Sure.
Well, we implement cost-saving measures because You know, we do believe that we're stewards of the taxpayer money, and you are under a tremendous amount of pressure to put the money where it needs to go. So it's my responsibility to make sure that we tighten our belts as much as we can. So in the IT department, we had $1.1 million in cost-saving measures. I am a big proponent of taking two positions and making sure that we can put them together where we reduce personnel costs, we reduce health and retirement costs. We have done that on a few occasions in the office. We try and streamline as much as we can, but where we see that it's going to affect the public safety or the public welfare, whether it's in Bureau of Consumer Protection, Medicaid fraud that returns money to the Commonwealth, or in the area of law enforcement, then I believe it's also our responsibility to let you know that those are needed positions. The 18 positions that we're asking for in Medicaid fraud, only 4.4 of them will actually be paid for by the state. The remaining will be paid by federal funds. And again, because of the return on our investment of what we save the taxpayers in dollars from fraud, as well as what the Medicaid fraud unit then returns back to the Commonwealth, we believe it's a good investment.
You got to go a long way to meet Penn State. They like to say they give us back $80 for every one we give them. Are you anywhere close to that? Redundant. My apologies, Chairman. I have a couple more questions. What's your departmental budget for outside counsel, and are you going to maintain this funding line item?
We have, I can provide all of the contracts for outside counsel. Most of them are based on contingency fees. We have specific policies regarding the types of contracts, and the intent is to ensure the greatest amount of transparency and accountability when we're contracting. We believe that using outside counsel on a contingency fee, which, as you all know, means that the outside counsel absorbs all of the expenses of the litigation and only get paid in the event that the Commonwealth wins, is a good investment. If the Office of Attorney General doesn't have the particular expertise, such as perhaps in the tobacco litigation case, then we believe that it is the money well spent in contracting with outside counsel that does have that expertise. And in fact, it did work with ORIC, and you were all stakeholders in that as well. Office of Attorney General paid 50% of the ORIC bill, Governor's Office paid 40%, and then the remaining was split amongst the caucuses. And because of that, I believe it was $125 million we got back from the Commonwealth. So where we paid, I believe it's $1.8 million now on that contract, we received $125 million back that we may not otherwise have had. We keep very strict controls over it. We only use outside counsel, particularly on contingency basis or on an hourly basis, if we feel that we don't have the resources or the expertise. In our office, our resources for expert attorneys' fee or expert counsel fees or expert fees are taken from our restricted revenue accounts, particularly in PPD. They sometimes are huge expenses that we may not be willing to bear or we cannot bear because of financial reasons. If we shift that burden onto outside counsel and they absorb those fees and we can recover monies for the Commonwealth Treasury, then it seems to be well worth it.
Thank you. I'm monopolizing this time, and I didn't mean to. I have two questions quickly.
My answers are long-winded. It's not all of you.
Oh, no, I'll take the hit for that. Reciprocity of firearms carry agreements with neighboring states. Will you be revisiting this year?
We are required annually to revisit, to do a survey of all of the states to see what their interest is in entering into a reciprocity contract with Pennsylvania. Presently, we have reciprocity, I believe, with 28 states. 22 states cannot or will not enter into agreements with Pennsylvania. So we're required to do it every year.
Last question. This is just for me, nobody else. Are you going to choose to not enforce any more laws this legislature passes in the upcoming session?
There wasn't any law that I didn't enforce. If we're talking about DOMA, the Office of Attorney General does not enforce the marriage laws. So there was a lot of confusion in the beginning as to whether we would or would not enforce the law. We don't have the ability to enforce that law. What happened is because of material difference between the governor's position and my position as a lawyer representing the Commonwealth, he was best served, and the Commonwealth was best served by having his own lawyers represent him. as you well know, under the rules of professional conduct for a lawyer, we are required to delegate a case where we have a material difference with our client. Otherwise, it's unethical, and quite honestly, then your client doesn't get the best defense that he or she deserves.
I'm just a high school history teacher. I don't know any legal jargon. But thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Attorney
Thank you.
General.